Wuthering Waves community, the Neo Genshin community, does not have a me. What I mean by that, you don't have someone who's actually, it's easy for fighting game players to understand this. It's very difficult for gacha game players to understand and accept this. This is called kara canceling. Now I can take kara canceling to the next stage. Now I can implement negative edging.
I can negative edge all over you.
If you think this is super sweaty, welcome to fighting games, buddy.
I am also a huge fighting game fan. Honestly, he's incredibly off base.
Because I know it seems like I'm bashing on Wuthering. I am, because I don't want this to be taken like as a I hate Wuthering. I don't. I like Wuthering. I love the combat in the game. It's fucking stupid. It's the worst enemy design I've ever experienced in any game whatsoever. I've never experienced something as dumb as that.
When you say Wuthering's combat is bad because you spent a week trying to find practical applications for this cool tech, the juggling you discovered, and found out that the game has safeguards to prevent the exploitation of that tech, then I feel like you've lost the plot. Are Wuthering Waves or Zenless zzzero fighting games? A video popped up on my feed yesterday, and the title read, "This is genuinely ridiculous," and it featured two of some of my favorite gacha creators, Mr. Pokey and EO. I think Tectone also just dropped a video recently with almost the exact same thumbnail and the same title. I haven't watched that one yet, but I watched this one. I watched this one with Mr. Pokey. I gave it a watch, and the title did not lie. EO is a gacha game content creator, most known for his coverage on Honkai Star Rail, Wuthering Waves, and now Zenless zzzero. Recently, he's been catching a lot of flack for this video, which unfortunately we cannot review on its own because he paywalled it and restricted it to members only. Now, I don't blame him. Apparently, he was being bombarded by a lot of hate comments, and unfortunately, a lot of that hate came with a side of racism, which of course, that absolutely sucks. But I'm sure what you're wondering is, why is he receiving all of this hate? All I have is Mr. Pokey's reaction to it, which is an hour and 30 minutes. Now, I'm not going to sit here and react to what is equivalent to a full-length movie, but we're going to use clips and I'll do my best to summarize his points. In EO's video, he talks about an unnecessary war between the Wuthering Waves and the Zenless zzzero communities. Wuthering Waves is seen as a more hardcore, Soulsborne game baptized by Mr. Miyazaki himself, and Zenless zzzero is seen as an old Fisher-Price hand-me-down in terms of difficulty. And so what that means is, you have a lot of Wuthering Waves commenters dogging on Zenless zzzero as a game, practically since day one. And I've seen this myself. A lot of content creators especially were straight hating on the game since its launch and have only recently started to change their perception of it. That's what this video is supposed to be talking about. But to anyone actually paying attention to what EO was saying, it's clear that he is just using this video as a means to vent out his frustrations and grievances against both the Wuthering Waves community as well as his own. At the same time, he props himself up as this sort of peak content creator that has passion for his craft, and that the Wuthering Waves community's problem is that they don't have him or someone like him.
I know the reason the Wuthering Waves community is the way it is. This is gonna sound really egotistical, and I don't mean this as egotistical as
Yo, this is about to be absolute cinema.
this is gonna sound. But I want to make this message very clear, okay? Wuthering Waves community, the Neo Genshin community, does not have a me. What I mean by that, you don't have someone who's actually...
And so people's response to this is obviously angry. They're furious, and every little bad thing they thought about EO starts to boil over and come to light. EO is known by his circle of content creators and their fan bases as Bad Take EO, which honestly is a little mean. But after looking into it, I think one thing that is very clear is that EO has a huge ego and has been holding this over others for a while now. In his video, EO talks about another video he made. Broken New Tech is what is shown in the thumbnail. And in that video, he showcases a lot of cool tech for Wuthering Waves.
You saw how many times I canceled 4 different launchers. Guys, this is very important. I know I know this is like, some of y'all are gonna be like, bro, this doesn't matter. I can just mash square. Jian wants to use his ultimate anyway. There's a very key thing that I want y'all to understand, that it's easy for fighting game players to understand this. It's very difficult for gacha game players to understand and accept this. I just told you guys, it's basically square, hold square, and then jump. You hear the clunk? You hear the clunk? As soon as I hear the clunk, boom. Now that you know this, this is called Kara canceling. Now I can take Kara canceling to the next stage. Now I can implement negative edging. Negative edging basically is where you hold an input, you do something else, and then you basically release the punch button, right, that you were holding onto the whole time, so that you can get the input immediately. Frame one, you're gonna get whatever input you were looking for. Look, Jian is still, he performs the full thrust into launch.
Now, there are two gigantic problems in that video. One, the tech he shows is incredibly limited in its actual utility. Wuthering Waves is a game similar to Zenless zzzero. The objective of many endgame stages either involves destroying a boss or destroying an elite with a few mobs. The tech he displays involves juggling, which can only be done against the low-level mobs, not elites or the bosses. And on top of this, Wuthering Waves apparently has a combo limit mechanic, which prevents the mobs from being juggled after a certain amount of time. And the other huge problem is that he is forcing a lot of confusing fighting game jargon onto the gacha game community. In this video, the tech that he showcases are labeled negative edging and Kara cancels. Now, the first term, negative edging, is extremely funny considering how many edging jokes there are nowadays, but I've personally never heard of negative edging being used like that, because negative edge isn't really an active verb as much as it is just a noun, right? A game can allow for negative edge inputs, otherwise known as just button release inputs, and certain fighting game techniques are easier to pull off with negative edge. But it's not like I can negative edge all over you or anything like that. But that's besides the point. The reason why I'm doing this video in the first place is because I feel like if EO decided to watch this, let's say, that I might be one of the only people who can call him out on the ridiculousness of this, of his conduct recently, and for him to take that criticism to heart. Not only am I a content creator, I am also a huge fighting game fan. I've been playing fighting games for at least 15 years since the launch of vanilla Street Fighter 4. Now, maybe EO can kick my ass in something like Street Fighter 6. I honestly don't know. I don't play actively. How I play fighting games is that I usually have like 2 or 3 days where I just binge hardcore and then I stop for a few months and then come back to it whenever I feel the itch again, right? I'm only platinum rank in Street Fighter 6 with Aki. I've played a ton of other fighting games though in my 15 years, obviously. Tekken, Marvel vs. Capcom 3, Blaze Blue, Skullgirls, Dragon Ball FighterZ, you name it, right? Probably more than I can remember. The point is, I'm very familiar with the jargon he's trying to push onto the gacha game community, and honestly, he's incredibly off base. Not only is it silly to try and force these terms onto this community, but it's not even being used properly. If we're going to be pedantic and demand things being called the proper names, then what he's calling Kara canceling is not actually Kara canceling. Kara canceling is originally a Japanese term, because fighting game players are weebs, and a lot of tech came from Japanese players who would know life at the arcades and find these techniques. A lot of the prominent fighting games like Street Fighter is made by a Japanese company, so obviously a lot of Japanese players are really into it. Kara comes from the Japanese word kara, which means empty. If you or EO read the definition on the fighting game glossary or whatever, you might stop at the first clause, which reads, the ability to very quickly cancel a move into another move, and ignore practically everything else. But Kara canceling is not that. That's just describing a cancel, and how he's doing it is by inputting a jump command with his launcher when Jian launches the enemy with his spear. When that launcher makes contact with the enemy, he puts a jump command to cancel the recovery of it. But a Kara cancel is a very specific type of cancel. Kara canceling refers to canceling a move into another move before the first move completes its startup frames. A fighting game move has 3 phases. It is the startup frames, so like your character winding up for the punch, right? The active frames where your character's actually throwing the punch, where it's active, where the opponent will be receiving the hit. And then the recovery frames when you are sort of following through the motion, but you're not actually dealing damage, right? The recovery frames, you recovering from throwing the punch. In most fighting games, a normal cancel involves canceling a normal move into a special attack as soon as the normal move hits. Kara canceling strictly means that the first move cannot hit. It does not hit. Now you might be wondering, why would anyone do that? Isn't that just less damage? Wouldn't you want the normal hit to land in order to make a small little combo? And the answer is no. I'm very familiar with Kara canceling because it's how you perform one of the most popular techniques in Street Fighter 4, Ken's Kara throw. Ken has a special normal move, forward medium kick, where Ken takes a large step forward, then leads with a toe kick. This move pushes him forward by a lot. And the idea is that before the toe kick actually comes out, you would cancel it with a throw input. This lets you essentially extend the range of the throw by a huge margin, and having this technique was a huge advantage that Ken had over other characters. The importance here is though that this move must have started up. That's how Ken is pushed forward so much, and that it must be cancelled before the kick actually comes out. Why? It's because the toe kick itself isn't cancelable, and even if it was cancelable, you wouldn't be able to land a throw since throws cannot combo from hits. So what EO is showing is just a normal cancel. He's canceling Gion's launcher with a jump input that doesn't come out if timed properly, allowing him to use other moves. He's not canceling the startup of the first move. The first move landed. The launcher landed. And he's not canceling the startup of the following move either. He's canceling the remaining active and recovery frames of the launcher so that he could do another move. And with regards to negative edge, yeah, that's the correct use, I think. I don't have Gion, so I can't test it out myself, but I'm assuming he's releasing his attack button here, which leads Gion to do an aerial follow-up even when he's not the active character. Which is cool, right? That is really cool. It's honestly cool stuff. So I'm not trying to discredit EO. Actually, I think he and his buddies are coming up with cool shit, and EO makes good content on a consistent basis. But I have to say, as a fellow fighting game fan, I think EO would do himself a ton of favors if he stopped seeing the Gacha community, his community, the Wuthering Waves community, whatever, as the unwashed masses, and that fighting games are their salvation. I get that EO is trying to show his love for fighting games and integrate that into his brand, but people can sense the ego and know that you're talking down on them when you say shit like this.
That it's easy for fighting game players to understand this. It's very difficult for Gacha game players to understand and accept this. And if you guys can't do this immediately, it's okay. Welcome to fighting games, buddy. Y'all think y'all are doing something now? That's baby. That is like the easy, and I know it's obviously not easy for you guys because some of y'all are saying like it's harder. I'm not calling anybody like bad or baby or whatever.
Fighting game tech isn't exclusive to fighting games. Cancels, Kara canceling, negative edge, footsies, neutral, you name it. All of these things exist in other games and other genres. The FGC loves to put a label on all these techniques because the skill ceiling for any fighting game is something that is always increasing. Fighting games are inherently competitive, so everyone is trying to have a leg up over the other as well as teach each other how to get better. It's very research intensive. You want to learn these new things. It's a matter of convenience to put these labels on everything. And the difference is that in the world of gacha games, these techniques are almost never going to be necessary after a certain point. Like Mr. Pokey says, gacha games are time-gated RPGs, and if someone can't clear the content now, they will after they spend the time or money to farm for more levels and equipment. The difficulty is very arbitrary and artificial because the answer is so inherently obvious. And I'm not trying to say like, then don't show cool shit. No, what I'm saying is When you say Wuthering's combat is bad because you spent a week trying to find practical applications for this cool tech, the juggling you discovered, and found out that the game has safeguards to prevent the exploitation of that tech, then I feel like you've lost the plot. Gacha games aren't fighting games, and when you've built up your community to consider difficulty and execution complexity to be inherent values and virtues for a game, then don't be surprised when that same community starts to resent you for calling them out on their supposed toxicity. You're the one who emphasizes the value of these sweaty mechanics, and when you bash on Wuthering Waves in favor of Zenless Zone Zero, a game that is for all intents and purposes strictly easier than Wuthering Waves in terms of surviving an encounter, then yeah, the gacha community is going to call you out on that. Now don't get me wrong, I relate a lot to what Io says in that video. Not necessarily the ego stuff where he says he's so passionate about content creation and that the problem with the Wuthering Waves community is that they don't have a him. I honestly don't know what he was cooking there, but his gripes with Wuthering Waves are very similar to mine. I agree that Wuthering Waves doesn't have a good overworld experience, but that's mostly because I can confidently say that I hate open world gacha games. I think the whole point of an open world is to be immersive, and that it's hard for me to immerse myself in a world that is inherently limiting by the time gate. There's only so many times I can try to farm an echo before I get bored of it, and no amount of puzzles can fix that. Open world games should emphasize freedom through a sandbox focused design like Metal Gear Solid 5 or Death Stranding.
Your main tools to assist you are ladders and ropes.
Or a self-insert immersive design like with Elden Ring or Skyrim. Genshin Impact and Wuthering Waves can't hold a candle to these games because they belong to, call it a genre or business model, whatever the fuck, it doesn't matter. It's a classification that is inherently going to place a lot of limitations on your freedom. And you could say it's ridiculous for me to compare Elden Ring to Genshin Impact, but no, I agree with Io on this point. My time is valuable, and I don't like to spend my time playing bad games that I don't like. I also think that in Wuthering Waves, the combat isn't all that. Like I said in my level 40 review of Zenless Zone Zero, I actually bash on Wuthering Waves quite a bit in that video. And what I say there essentially is that I don't think Soulsborne combat is good without Soulsborne agency. And what I mean is that in games like Elden Ring and Bloodborne, you have so much agency over a million factors that affect difficulty, from your soul level to your build to summons to skadoosh seeds, everything, right? Not only that, you can always turn around from the boss door, farm, then come back. The suffering and frustration is yours to own and mold, but with games like Wuthering Waves, especially as a free-to-play player, you are stuck with what you've got and you need to swallow your pride until you get the gacha energy needed to farm all your mats. It's not a roguelike game. You can't just reset your run because you'd be resetting all the time you put into the account. When you hit a wall, it's hard to place any value in your play and skill and say, oh, I just need to get better, when you know that the designed answer is to simply wait and farm more mats or spend money. And again, I'm okay with the gacha game being a gacha game, but I think it pairs up badly with Soulsborne-like combat on a personal level. The difference between me and Io is that I have no problem saying that I don't like Wuthering Waves. I have no idea why Io in that video refuses to say he dislikes the game but gives a million reasons why he doesn't like the game. Even the combat, which he says he likes, he immediately will discredit and call bullshit because the game has safeguards against infinite juggling and it has annoying mobs that use shield mechanics. I love Zenless Zone Zero's combat because it's designed in a fundamentally different way. Zenless Zone Zero doesn't try to be a Soulsborne game. Instead of placing so much emphasis on focus on surviving the encounter, it leaves a blank canvas for you to focus on min-maxing and optimizing your own gameplay instead of having to react to tricky attacks and timed parries. And again, you can say skill issue, that just means it's easier, whatever, I don't care. I like the game more because it's more fun for me. and nobody can take that away from me. But yeah, that's what I think about this whole drama. I thought this was relevant because EO brought up plenty of good points on why he didn't like Wuthering, like I did in my previous video, which all of y'all blew up, by the way. Thank you so much for that. And I also think my experience as a fighting game player is something I can use to weigh in on the situation a bit more, since it seems like EO seems to disregard a lot of opinions if they don't come from other fighting game players, which I think is, I don't know, that's a little weird. Thank you all for watching. Like, sub, share, and comment, and I'll see you all on the next one. Peace.